Okay guys, I'm going to kind of go on. I'm going to go to a smaller brush. I'm going to keep that smaller brush handy. And this is where I'm going to start to get a little bit particular because I want to look at some of these values. I'm going to study my work. See, I see back here, it's where his neck is turned. Okay, so we start adding the character within the shadows. Now, the more you study something, the more you're going to see. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So right here, kind of does one of these things. And then kind of does this, and then it gets dark down here. So what I'm going to do, there. Okay, so I'm going to, this kind of comes this way, yep. So you can kind of see that one thing, we have that kind of curled up like that. So one thing I did on this one, so you can already see what I did on his neck. Makes a huge difference, okay? Let's choose by the main. Okay, so if I come here, and if we follow Da Vinci's rule, anything close to light is going to be much darker, much richer. It also makes the light shine through better. So I'm going to come in here, and instead of making it really light, I'm going to make it really dark, okay? Again, this is the true form of the reason why you do value sketches and value studies and all this type of stuff. Okay? And the one reason why I like this color, because it makes you have to work a lot of layers in order to get this done. So I'm going to come here. One of these things. Now the saddle horn, the whole part of the saddle horn's in dark. Now the question also here, why am I doing this part of the horse rather than the whole thing? Yeah? Well, that is a very good question. Thank you for asking. I think I will answer it. Well, the reason why is because it's creative decision. It's interesting. I've worked with Carl so many years that when I'm doing this, see here, okay, oh there, look at that. I forgot all about him. And you can kind of see when I'm doing this, also it's changing those values. And I can kind of lighten those up here. This right here, because it's about that light part. Notice also how I'm using my hand. I'm using the brush, okay? I'm also trying to stay away from the white areas because this here, I really want to make sure and even their heads have some shape. So you want to keep that in mind that when you're doing this, it's not a flat surface right there. It's not flat here. It's not flat on the image. So don't do it. And everything has a value system. So even if I'm working here, say, I want to make sure that those values are represented, okay? So when we look at there, what's happening? Now all of a sudden you start getting shape to his head. You know, that eye socket pops out to where this part lightens up. Then all of a sudden I got to go dark here because it kind of darkens up around the eye. And I'm going to come here. Okay. Now, because I did it there, I would definitely want to work it down here. I don't want it just to be hanging. So I'm going to come this way. And I'm going to take that value down because I'm working with all this. Because when I add that other color in for that one, it's going to wind up. And there we go. One thing people do get mixed up is the shape of a jaw. They think it's round. If you do a round jaw, I'm sorry, he's going to look like he's got mumps or something like that. You definitely don't want to do that. You want to make sure that when you're doing this, that what's represented is exactly only what you see, not what you think. A lot of people make that mistake and that's the reason why they're unsuccessful in their painting. So it'll help you out here. And for these white areas, I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to just drop in some values, kind of how I see it. But again, this is going to be titanium white, and I'm not going to make this, I'm not going to make this sole color. And this is the first time I've ever really done this with coal, so just so you know. Typically I'm already into some teals, but I think this is kind of important, so this will be the first one that I've ever done of him, so you guys can actually see how this stuff ties together. And I want you to notice that usually I wear glasses, so this actually is something that I'm doing without glasses, okay? Let's see, I got so. Now one thing, it's funny because the way his head's turned, there's that dark right there, it comes this way, and then it kind of goes back under shadow, under the head. Okay, so now I'm going to come here, I'll work these areas. You kind of see my bridle here, and I've got and you just got to keep your head about yourself when you're doing this type of work and understand why you're doing this and what its purpose is. So everything I do always has a purpose, and there's an intention when I do this. Okay, this isn't something that I just made up. This is something that, the white part here. Okay. So, not looking too bad. I'm going to go back up. See, this right here makes it look like, he's got his hip is all funked out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work up here just so we can round that thing off again. Now let's see, did that round it off? And there we go. So it has that effect, but it's going to round off when I get the other colors in there. So I'm going to come over now. So if I was doing this as a value sketch, this is going to be pretty close to where I want it to be. I'm going to take some of this color here. I'm going to work it because the way these shadows go. See, he goes like this toward the back of this hip because these shadows. So I'm going to come in here and everywhere. I don't want to put it in heavy because I want lights to come through there because there's going to be some direction going down. But actually it's, you can kind of see it. And I really like that part for some reason. And I'm going to come and you learn to control your brush, and how you do that is basically, like right now, my brush is still wet and damp. Okay, and to me that's an important element. If it's not wet and damp, you've done something. Okay, I want you to notice something. How light this is here, how light that is. Okay, this is not that light, so I'm going to bring that down a couple, 5 or 6 steps. And notice how I'm using my hand. I'm scrubbing the color back and forth. You got to remember, I paint all the way to the edges. And so when I'm doing this, I'm learning more about my painting. Okay, going in here, Okay, I'm going to step back. We'll look at the camera. Okay, the camera kind of bounces out a little bit. And you're starting to see a kind of a rugged horse. Okay, like I said, you're seeing it from a camera standpoint. Kids are seeing it from if they're part of the class, they can see that. But for the most part, you know, it will build until I get what I want or I change the other colors. See, this right here, that's kind of that area it starts to do one of these things around his hip. And that's one thing you're going to start noticing is that as you work with this, you got to remember where your values go. You got to remember working with shapes. You got to work also that when you're doing this, you've got to watch. You learn how to see in dark areas. Okay, like you see me working here, but I'm not working everything, am I? I'm working areas where I see a shadow here, I see a shadow there. This here, if I look at here, it has this kind of cut line here for some reason. I don't know. It might be part of the muscle structure, which I think it is. So I'll put that there. Come here. I am kind of protecting this a little bit here. I'm going to direct back that out. Okay. So again, when I'm doing this, now by doing this also, and darken up in these areas here, it kind of, see how I brought that back a little bit? I mean, if I wanted, I could come in here and make it even brighter. Again, I'm not trying to hide my sketch or anything. I'm not trying to hide the work. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm trying to think what well, that's what that is. Okay, never mind. Because it has this kind of arch thing right there. And I want you to notice something, that this is almost pitch black, or darkest value as I possibly can get it here. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to darken that up so you can kind of see. And then I can come into this eye a little bit, and it kind of drops down values. I'm going to come here. So every time also, by me exploring values with you guys, another thing that happens during this whole mess is that I improve upon my painting skills. Okay? So that's what you want to keep in mind, that whenever you do something enough, you're going to improve. You can't get out of it. Okay. So, and yeah, I'm using my hand like, you know, like that. And I want to come here like so. Okay, now I have worked a lot on this horse. So I'm going to go ahead and stop. Now this again, like I said, this is a true value study. This isn't one where you're looking at the horse going, oh, it's got to be finished. No, it's a value study at this point. But I'm building it up. Okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing. Okay, now, if you really want to get specific, I got this happening, right? I got raw umber. That's typically my first underpainting color I work with. This is also building an underpainting. So now I'm going to go to a bigger brush, clean off the paint, clean off the water, test it out, make sure it's damp and cool to my touch. Feels good. Now I'm going to load from the top of the brush. So I'm going to squeeze out just a touch. And notice I'm only working a little bit. Now look how dark that is. Okay. So that's going to give me an extremely rich look. Now what I want to do is I want to control that a little bit. So I'm going to thin it out on my hand. I'm going to come into the darkest area I possibly can, which is here. Because I want to test it. Okay. Okay. What did that do? That just rounded that off, didn't it? I can also come here. I don't want to change the dynamics of this quinacridone. So I'm only going to work this in areas where it's exceedingly dark. And then I know exactly kind of where I want to go with it. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay. I'm going to move around too. And I don't want to have a direction on it either. I want to have kind of a movement here, back and forth. Okay, this kind of comes down. It's dark here. so it's dark all the way down. So I can actually do this. It's like that, okay? So this color right here really does help establish your darkest values. And it goes to your lightest values. So I'm going to come in here and play with it a little bit, and you can kind of watch. Like I said, you can kind of see what's happening with the horse. It's darkening up that area. It's giving kind of a rugged look. Okay. I'm going to smush that up a little bit because inherently when I'm into this mane, it's completely dark. I add a lot of different colors to that. So I'm going to come in here. Blur my vision to make sure I'm seeing what I'm seeing. I got to move away from that, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to square off his jaw a little bit because I can do that, and I'm the artist. Now typically another thing we'll do is I will show you what happens when you glaze. Okay? Okay, I'm going to come in here. Notice I'm working that. I'm almost not taking I can use the side of the brush as a scrubber and scrub it down and drop those values down. Try to protect my red or this quinacridone. And it mixes with this color so nicely that it's almost like a darker value, but when you're done. And that in essence prepares me to do lighter colors. Okay? I'm going to drop it here. No, here. Sorry, not COVID, just dry mouth. I can scrub that in. It creates that first value. Hold on a second, folks. Sorry about that. Dry throat, so I had to grab my coffee. Yes, I drink a lot of coffee. But what you're seeing here, I was able to sit back from it, and you can see it's not perfect, is it? But it's got some development. It's got some things going on. It usually has to do with the color you're working. Now, also another thing, what do you notice? I'm not using a small brush. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to just continue. I want to have it a little bit. I want to have the brush a little bit wet, because you can put it in there, and I'm going to pull back on some of this paint that's on here, and I'll shape those areas too, just so you know. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to come here, now typically I've got a teal which I work with. I don't want to have that too much. Okay. Looks like there's with his mouth being open like that, it looks like there's some other things going on there. Hey, boss.
If you had anybody for restroom.
I would like to have somebody for restroom, but you guys all decided to bail on me, so yeah. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to come down here where this now, and you're going to start seeing how this plays by leaving it so pale down here. So I'm going to come in. And I want to have splotchy, so I'm going to go ahead and just mix that with my brush. So whatever I do over top of that's going to help out. Okay. So when I'm doing this part right here, what I'm doing is I'm really just building up layers of paint so I can actually work with this thing. Now what I'm going to do after this, I'm actually going to glaze this. Okay, I'm not going to muck around with it. Okay, so come this way, like that. I could do it over here, but I think I'm going to stay away from that only because I know what I want to do with that. I want to come in and maybe drop this down a little bit. I might leave that there. Again, I'm going to have to do some work with other colors, so I'm not too worried about it. I want to scrub over top of that. I don't want to hide the tack, but I definitely want to, there we go. I want to muck that up a little bit. And this comes out here. There's a little bit of darkness over here type thing. I got this coming down here. Notice I'm just using the color on the brush. I'm not trying to improve upon the painting. I'm not trying to do anything more, but I'm just trying to get some texture on there. Okay, now one thing I want to do is I want to address this area right here. See, that actually, when it comes down, it gets lighter down here, but it actually just a little bit, not much. So I'm kind of protecting that area a little bit too much, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce it down. And again, look at how I'm using my brush. I'm pulling away, but I'm scrubbing as I'm pulling away. And that makes your brush so it lasts a lot longer. And I'll just do this to kind of represent how that tail goes, because this will build up over this way. Haven't worked on the saddle at all. That's fine. Come here, I'll show you, I'll darken that up. And you can kind of see how those values, by doing that, how it changes just the shape of the head and everything else. See, now you're starting to see a saddle horse there, and he's not even really there yet. This is just the underpainting process. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to go to my smaller brush. And if your brush is soaking in water, you don't have to pull it out and clean it off right away. You know, and I got videos all over the place on how to take care of your brushes so they will last. So I'm going to come in here, and this is actually the first time I'm going to start. So by using that smaller brush, I'm able to establish that saddle a little better. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come in here, and I want to shade that down a little bit. Come up here, I want to take the brush. And what I could have done is I could have actually printed the side of this so this actually was continuing on the side. But for the most part, I don't necessarily always want to do that. And of course, smaller brush, and it'll have to work. Now I'm going to make his blaze. This is what they call a blaze. This white here is a blaze. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to make that a teal. So any of the area that's hitting light will be white, and this will be teal. I'm telling people when they're looking at this, when I put that in, that that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And that's how you find, that's how you find out what, if people are understanding your principle behind it or not. Okay, so you see me, I'm putting this in here. I'm starting to get some nice shape out of it. I can do this. The saddle's there. Now notice how rough this is. This is also, it's not defined out, okay? So I'm looking at Call. I mean, I get this kind of really cool, kind of reddish brown horse. you know, but I'm not into red and brown horses. I'm basically into multicolored crazy horses look. So what'll happen is when you see him over the next few weeks, he'll actually morph and change some more to where this horse actually becomes almost 3D, because I'm going to stop here. I'm going to let this dry, and I might have time to glaze it for you so you can kind of see. So 2 colors glaze. So this is going to really make it pop later. And I don't want to do a light glaze. I want to do a little bit of a thick glaze. If it cracks, okay. I let the glaze be natural. It's okay. Always caps on the tubes. Hands, you can wash your hands. Stop worrying so much about being dirty. You guys are whining. I got graphite on my hand. Oh no. Yeah, so what? So anyway, this is the next stage. The next video will definitely be the video on glazing this, because we glaze between stages, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching.